to talk about what are rights. If we can't agree on what rights are, or even if they exist, if we can't agree that they exist, then how do we go about this situation about rights? So this is not to talk about what we have the right to do. This has nothing to do with that. I'm not talking about what people have the right to do, whether they have the right to go to school, or they have the right to drive a car, or they have the right to vote. I'm not talking about what people have the right to do. I'm talking about what rights are. A right is a legal, social, or ethical standard that people are entitled to. It is a social normative or idea of what is allowed by people and what is owed to people. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, rights are entitlements not to perform certain actions or not to be in certain states, or entitlements that others not perform certain actions or not be in certain states. So basically it's just this agreement between people or a group of people to do or to not do something. And it can be written down like a legal document. It can be spoken. Some things people believe are innate, so we just know them. So that kind of leads me into natural rights. Natural rights are very interesting because they come from natural law. It's basically just the law of the land, the law of the earth, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I don't think that there is a law of the earth or anything like this. I think Mother Nature is bound by no rules at all. But let's say you do believe that there is natural law, and so you believe in natural rights. Natural rights are not man-made. That's the point of them. They're supposed to come from nature. They are not given by a governing body. They are what some would call inalienable. The United States declares life and liberty as natural rights. Although that kind of remains to be seen, right, if they actually believe that, because they are taking people's lives all the time. But natural rights, most people believe that we all have a natural right to live. That is our right. We have the right to live. John Locke, he talked a lot about natural rights. He says that natural rights have always been. Before there were states or other governing bodies, there was nature, and the people of the earth were all subject to the laws of nature. Those laws created what is known as natural rights. We have this idea in our minds that the right to live is considered a natural right. I question whether that's even really natural, because Mother Earth does some pretty intense things. You know, there's earthquakes, there's tsunamis, there's hurricanes, there are all kinds of volcanoes, there are all kinds of things that are destructive and can harm thousands and thousands of people, right? According to your natural right to live, from my perspective, and maybe I'm wrong, because I don't know all this stuff, I just know what I understand, so if you have a different viewpoint, that's cool, you can tell me, but is nature going to stop being nature because you have the right to live? I don't think so. That's why I don't think that there's any natural law or any natural rights. Nature isn't bound to any laws or any rules, and it will just be itself. So if a tsunami is coming, it's coming, and it's not because nature is invading your right to live, but it's because that's nature. I kind of disagree with the fact that the right to live is even stated under natural law, because I don't believe that. The earth provides all the necessities that we need to live. If we imagine a world without warmongering governing bodies controlling the resources and the flow of energy, but it does not give any individual, whether human, plant, or animal, the right to live. It simply provides the means to live, and you, whatever you are, plant, animal, or human, have to work in some form or another to survive. So if you're a plant, you have to spread your leaves out and capture the sun's rays. That's your job, okay? If you want to live, that's what you have to do. If you're a tiger, you have to spend part of your day hunting in order to survive. Humans, we have to build shelter in order to survive. A right isn't something that's inherent. I believe natural rights are supposed to be innately understood. So the right to live is supposed to be, this deeper understanding or agreement between people and life itself that we have the right to live. But that's not the case. Nature doesn't grant us the right to live. Nature provides the ability to survive, and we can either take that opportunity or we can ignore it and die. So, which isn't what most people do. Legal rights are granted by a governing body. They are built into a society by a legal contract. Legal rights don't have to be morally acceptable. They are usually not granted to the whole world. They're just certain countries have certain rights, and other countries, they may not have those same rights. Individuals are subject to whatever their authoritative ruling body declares as a right. It is something given, not innately possessed. So unlike natural rights that are supposedly innately understood, legal rights are written down and they are given to people. I would totally disagree and say that legal rights are not rights at all. They're approved actions that the governing body allows the people to do. So you have the right to get married, but only under the circumstances and conditions and only the way that the government or the governing body of your home says is okay. You have the right to public education. Is it really a right whenever I can't choose what type of schooling she goes to and all the schools are exactly the same? It has to be a specific school that you have the right to. I wouldn't agree that legal rights are rights. Now, maybe by definition they are right because it is like a legal contract that you're making with somebody, although we could even go into another discussion that we never entered any legal contract with the United States. So are these rights even mine? I don't know. I would disagree with calling those rights. I would say that those are more like privileges. Legal rights, are they rights? If you can't do something without asking for permission, it doesn't sound like a right to me. Okay, so a few other types of rights. We have positive rights and we have negative rights. Positive rights are very, very interesting to me. A lot of people claim positive rights as something that is necessary, that it is innate as well. So some examples of positive rights: education, healthcare, housing, internet, food, employment, the list can go on. Positive rights are typically enforced by a governing body. I agree that whatever body we are funding to do that, they should provide the needs, wants, desires of the people. But the fact is that they don't. I don't believe that positive rights are rights either. I also think that they're privileges. They are ideas or agreements between the people and those who grant the positive rights. So notice that somebody has to grant those positive rights. They are not innate. The right to life is not completely compatible or intertwined with the right to housing and food, although in some people's minds these are one and the same. Let's just say people have the right to live, because like I said, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But let's say they do, okay? Most people would say that everybody has the absolute right to live. They would then conclude that in order for people to have the right to live, they must have the right to housing and food, and in some cases, education. These are really beautiful wants, but they are not rights. In order to provide these necessities for the 7 billion people of the planet, it would have to be energy taken, either voluntarily or involuntarily, from another person or group of people. I do agree that we should help each other out. If you see a hungry person on the road, you should buy him food. If you believe education is important and everyone should have access to it, start your own school or start your own initiative to educate those around you. You can make pamphlets, you can hold meetings, reach out to people, but you can make a difference. You can voluntarily give up that energy to provide these privileges or rights that you think that people should have access to. But you should not rely on a government to give you those rights. That's one problem I see with positive rights. Everyone should have an education or be able to have access to an education. But are they rights? People latch onto these positive rights because they want the world to be better. But the thing is, we can't ask a government who doesn't care about your rights at all to grant you positive rights. It took 100 years of the women's suffrage movement for them to actually gain the right to vote. 100. To me, that is one of the most ridiculous things. I mean, if you have the right to vote, you have the right, right? It's there. But you don't. You don't have the right to vote. We live under a governing body who controls what our rights are. And this is why I don't think that rights are a thing. They are privileges that some other ruling class or master class has handed down to us. We need to find a way to break away from these controlling entities that grant us these rights, because where one person may gain, another person may lose. So if we have the right to certain things, somebody else has to provide those things. And that's either going to be done on a voluntary basis or an involuntary basis. And our government likes to coerce people. Not just our government, but governments around the world. They like to coerce people, and they like to force people to do things. So those positive rights, maybe they have good intentions, but they're not coming from the right place. Negative rights are kind of weird to me. But basically, it's the right to non-interference. It means that the individual has the right to do nothing. So, who has rights? Okay, so we just went over some of the 4 basic types of rights. Who has these rights? Okay, if rights exist, who has them? Is it the individual? Is it the collective? Do children have rights? Do plants and animals have rights? Does the earth have rights? I don't know. Okay, so every person on the earth seems to believe that they have rights, and maybe they do, but how do we all agree on who has rights in our current society? With Big Brother watching, hey, one could argue that these rights do not exist. We have been granted the right to privacy, but do we actually have that right? How do we solve the clashing of the right of the individual and the right of the collective? When is it morally acceptable to force an individual to obey or follow the demands of what you believe is your right? We believe we have the right to free speech here in the United States, but do we? What about when someone says something that is racist? Do racists lose their right to free speech? So is it a right anymore? What about when we have a group of people who need more financial assistance than another group of people? Do we invade the rights of one group to provide for the rights of another? Some people would say yes, and in some cases we do that. I don't really agree with that form of action because you're invading the rights of another person. So rights should be equal, right? They should be equal things, like everybody has the same rights. But you can't have that if you're enforcing a right and it's invading someone else's right, okay? Different types of people, do they have rights? Children, do those that are deemed mentally ill, which, by the way, is a whole nother discussion about why the government would want to deem people mentally ill, so they can put you on a blacklist. And it's just silly. So, do those people have rights? Do handicapped people have rights? Most people would probably say, of course, all these people have rights. Of course. Why would they not have rights? Honestly, no one has rights. Nobody. People labeled with mental disorders are the first individuals to lose their rights in the current political regime. Mental disorders cannot even be biologically pinpointed in many cases and are typically diagnosed based off descriptions found in textbooks. Okay? So mental diseases, I do believe that they are real. This is not to say that they aren't real. But they are not something that we understand on a biological level. We understand them based off of characteristics or descriptions of that. And a lot of them share very similar descriptions. Labeling someone with a mental disease and then putting that on their record and limiting them from working in certain places or owning certain things like guns and stuff like this, you're taking away their rights. Now they're no longer an equal individual to you. Now they are less than. So is that acceptable? What about animals? Do animals have rights? So if you have the right to live, does an animal also have the right to live? And are you invading their right by eating them? And plants too, do they have the right to live? Does the earth have the right to live? Are we invading the rights of the earth whenever we take materials to build our homes with? Who has rights? Who exactly? Who grants the rights? Do you grant the rights to yourself? Are inalienable rights just supposed to be known? Are rights given as privileges by governing bodies? Who grants rights? If we have rights, they come from somewhere. So if you're religious, you may say that they come from your God. If you're a statist, you may say that they come from the state. Rights are either given or taken. They are not just floating in the air. If I say I have the right to have decent housing, do I go and take over someone else's home to acquire the right housing for myself? Is it my right? Or do I force someone else to build me a suitable house? If it's a right, then I should obtain this right for free, right? If I have to pay for it, whether in monetary or energy-wise, then it's not a right anymore. It's something that I have to do to get something else. So if I want a house, I have to build that, or I have to pay for that, or I have to ask somebody to help me build a house. I have to get the materials to build the house. So there's energy, money put into this. So it's no longer a right. A right would be there. If I coerce a group of people to build my house, have I overstepped their rights in order to achieve my own? If I build my own house, have I invaded the rights of the earth to gather the materials for the housing? Energy is always spent, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, to gain these rights. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but when I hear the word right, I think that it's something that everybody should have. It's not. They're not things that everybody has or should have. Nobody should have anything. All rights are man-made ideas, and there is no higher authority who grants everyone the same rights. Rights are privileges. They are things that some people are capable of and some are not. Should we help those less capable in achieving what we wish everyone to have? Yes, I think that we should. But again, this doesn't change the fact that they are not rights. It is a privilege to live. It is a privilege to eat. Sadly, not everyone has these privileges. I hope that one day we can create a world where we will all have the same privileges, where everyone has the same means to create or have a home, to grow or obtain food, to buy or make clothing. In the end, though, these are privileges. Rights, I think the word right gets intertwined and becomes synonymous with the word privilege. Some people have more privilege than others based off of race, based off of gender, based off of where they're born, based off of what type of religion they are. So those are things that you can't necessarily choose, maybe religion, but you can't necessarily choose all those things. You're just born with those privileges already in your hand. Now, do I think that that is right, and right as in morally just? No, I don't. But that is what it is. Rights are not there. They are privileges. And then the rights that we have in the United States, the rights, they are also privileges handed down by that government. So you don't choose your privileges, and we have limited privileges due to the ruling body of government who maintains a monopoly on the privileges that are given. They maintain control over what rights are given and who has rights and who does not have rights. Without the central government controlling all aspects of education, energy, resources, business protection services, we would have more privileges and we would be more capable of providing what we believe others should have. Unfortunately, we are subject to these rulers, which is why it is essential we leave this currently dead-end system in its place. We can create the world we wish to see here and now. We can help people without the government in place. But we have to unite as a people of the earth. We have to believe in the power within ourselves. We have to create alternatives to the situations at hand. Agorism is a really peaceful means to an end, and I can't really get into that right now, but you should definitely look into that, or if you're following the conscious resistance, I know that you've heard that word. So we can discuss in a in debate or discussion between people what privileges we believe everyone should have. That's a totally different discussion. I'm not saying that I don't think people should have the privilege to live, or have the privilege to education, or internet access, or to a world where there aren't bombs falling on them. I think that those are all things that everybody should have and we should want for the world. But I think that we need to step back and stop using the word privilege with the word right, because they're not the same thing. I don't think that rights exist. I think that they're ideas that we come up with in our head, and where I have a right, it could invade in the rights of someone else. So then those don't become rights anymore, and people don't have equal rights. Basically, people don't have equal privileges, and that's what it all boils down to. So this whole discussion is not to discuss what we should have and shouldn't have. It's whether rights exist or don't exist. So let me know what you think, and if you have any other things that I can read my essay about it. And yeah.